the thing that is also obvious, that with now all the Chinese spies that have been deeply embedded in industry and science and pretty much throughout our government, who've been embedded in all the major electronics labs, any place that had any national security implications, ramifications, or was used by the U.S. government, they've been there. In essence, we've allowed, have we not, and maybe these are my words, I'm not trying to put them in your mouth, but we've allowed the ultimate fox to come in and eat the best laid eggs that are coming out of the brain farm, and then, basically, it's too late. What do they say? It's too late, to worry about the barn or the horses in the barn when the fire's already burned down the barn. So given the fact that human intelligence in China and Russia still is at a preeminence over high-tech stuff, like all of our satellite sensors and underwater sensors and everything like that, how do we basically counteract that in a politically left, democratic, when I say democratic, I'm not talking about democracy, I'm talking about the Democrats that have open relationships, Nancy Frankenstein, Feinstein, Dianne Feinstein. I call her Dianne Not So Feinstein. The thing is that she's basically had a Chinese agent working in her, and even in all of the hoopla, they're always making excuses. Trudeau in Canada. So how, you're a war college guy, but who said a nation can withstand its enemies from without, but cannot withstand them from within? How do we, as the American people, really grasp the nature of treason that's gone on against our country?
Yeah, it is. It's true treason. I just have observed that the administration rightly decided to treat the Confucius Institutes in the universities, where we happen to do a lot of our research, as foreign entities, and treat them accordingly, and make them go through more of a protocol to acknowledge the types of business that they're in and so forth. You remind me, Steve, of an incident in the 90s when I was working, I was down at the Family Research Council as the vice president for policy, and I was on the Hill, and I accompanied Wei Jingcheng, who was the son of a Chinese general who happened to be a human rights activist that was exiled after being imprisoned in China. And Wei would go in and talk about human rights, and I would go in and talk about the military threat posed by China. And this was decades ago. And I recall going to this one congresswoman's office, and we were making our case that, we should not have most favored nations status with China, that we should not support, the various, good things for the Chinese communists. And she said, look, and frankly, I'm getting a lot of money from people doing business with China. I just cannot afford politically to do what you're asking me to do by opposing access by the Chinese to our industry and our markets. That was rather sobering. That was decades ago. China has poured literally billions of dollars into trying to persuade our political class to accept, their, position, their views, their market access, and so forth. And they've done, quite frankly, very well. And as a result, I don't think the average American has any concept as to how they have permeated our industry, our universities, even our government. K Street is lined with Chinese money that is seeking access to new opportunities all the way. This is ultimately what I call a war against God. And we've seen it before. I go back to the end of World War I, when you had the defeat of the Wehrmacht and of course you had the rise of nationalism, socialist nationalism in the German Republic. And then, of course, they went through a similar period of unrest and anarchy until the leader, Adolf Hitler, rose to the point that he could create a cult following within a segment of that population that gave him dominance not only in the German government, but ultimately he was able to influence the direction. And of course, the rest is history, what he did to the Jews, but what also he did to the Christians, first trying to enlist their support, but then ultimately incarcerating them. And as Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, that they really were at war not with the Jews and not with the Christians, but with God. And they wanted to replace God. And I see that in an interesting way in this country as well. That the left, the Democratic Party that has become the new left, the progressive evil that I call it, that these people see very clearly that they want to replace the middle class, which for the large part has been God-fearing and been mostly Christian in this nation. They want to replace that. They want to destroy it to a certain degree. And they want themselves, their God, to be big government, their God to be the humanist, relativistic approach that they have embraced for so very long. So, unfortunately, what we're seeing on the streets of America is a reflection of what I really see is ultimately a spiritual battle, a spiritual battle between Satan and his demonic forces and the progressives that are conduits of that war, whether it's the mainstream media, which distorts the truth, or it's the associations, or even big corporations that embrace abortion on demand, homosexuality, and redefinition of marriage and family, redefinition and the manipulation of our education system. And of course, then you see the love affair that the left has with the religious intolerance of Islam and the left. So it truly is, and the unseen realm is very active today, and all we see are the carnage in the physical reality, but it's directly traceable to these actors that you started the question with, the Pelosi's, the Bidens, the Harrises, and the others that would first tear apart and destroy this nation so they can replace it with something that is so anti-God that it's hard to imagine.